Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning.
So this
I'm
is my
loving the
first live on
background you've
YouTube.
already got. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes.
That I wanted a pink wall that I have in my room, but the Wi-Fi was just not working. So this is what we got.
I feel like our backgrounds actually are a reflection of our personalities because I lean very plain and just bare minimum, keep it simple, and then I feel like you surround yourself with pretty objects. So
I like pretty things, yeah.
yes,
And
yes,
and
it works.
pink.
And
I got
pink,
dressed and I realized I would have matched my wall.
yeah.
That would have been funny.
Yes.
But so yeah, so this is my first live on YouTube, so this is monumental for me. But
Yeah, it's
I've
my
done
first time
lives on
doing a
the
dual live.
yeah, yeah, but this is easier for me because we chat a lot.
A lot. The goal is to not chat for 4 hours. That's the
No,
goal.
and 4 hours is like a decent time for us. We've been like coffee dates go up to like 6 hours sometimes.
We do.
All right, so what I wanted to talk about was
Mm.
how we pick our destinations. Because I realized that you and I think so differently. Like, I am very airy fairy, and you're very, like, you give it thought before you actually go to these places.
Mhm.
So I kind of wanted to pick your brain on how you go about, like, picking your next destination. Because we both slow travel, and we both like whatever we pick, we like to stay, like, a long time in.
Yeah.
But I feel that for me, at least, San Cristobal de las Casas was kind of like a fluke, right?
Mm.
Like, I knew I wanted to visit, but I never thought it would stay this long. And we've been here
Yeah.
for like a year and a half now, but it's not something I consider because I don't think I've ever chosen somewhere to live that I haven't actually like been in for long periods of time.
Mm.
So this was the first.
Whereas San Cris for me was my first choice for Mexico. Like when I was looking at Mexico, San Cris was the most logical choice. It missed one wicket though, and that wicket was enough for me to not move here initially. But
And what was that wicket?
Alex. So Alex needs friends. Always, always, always. He needs friends, people he can talk to, etc. And San Cris at the time, and I would say kind of even now, they don't have a strong expat community.
Right.
So, and they don't have a strong family expat community either. So then that's a whole smaller region. So I couldn't guarantee that Alex would find friends in San Cris. And I had never been to Mexico, didn't speak Spanish. And so San Cris seemed like the illogical choice from that perspective. So Merida.
And what were your choices? So you were in the US, you hadn't come here yet. What were your original choices?
My original choice was I just wanted to go to Mexico. I wanted to go to Mexico for braces. That was actually another factor also. I couldn't confirm any orthodontics here in San Cris online, right, remotely. So if it doesn't have braces, then it defeated the purpose of going. Irony because we took our braces off, but at the time, braces was important to us. And then Alex having friends. So blindly, I just started Googling Mexico cities, Mexico, like places to live in Mexico. And I hate beaches. I can handle it, but I don't want to live in a beach town. So those automatically got deleted for me, right? So then you're left kind of with.
And those are like the most popular ones.
Most popular. Yeah. But also I'm an introvert, so I don't particularly want crowds and I don't particularly want, anything overwhelming. So
yeah.
So that left, just I would say more than half, maybe 60 or so percent of the popular cities disappeared as soon as I got rid of beach life. I love mountains, and this automatically put like if you just search mountain town, San Cruz is probably one of the first one that'll pop up. Technically, though, there are many. Mountain towns.
I would say so, especially in the north area.
Yeah, but the first one that popped up was San Cris. So I'm looking at San Cris and I'm seeing the weather. I'm like, it's cold, but not like I don't want to live in snow, right? So it's cold, which I prefer. Mountains, which are beautiful. It's walkable. It's a small city. I was a little concerned about because I've never lived in a place that was 200,000. Certainly not less than that. So the size, I'm like, oh, we'll see what happens, but. Yeah, I couldn't find any online Facebook groups that implied families. I had individuals saying they had families, but nobody saying, hey, let's meet up together. Hey, let's do something. Hey, let's. So it seemed like a harder like starting point from a family viewpoint. And then
Yeah,
again,
and that's still the case. I don't think that's changed. I know when we first got here, we tried to put our 2 cents, and we tried to start a group so the kids could meet up and stuff like that,
yeah,
but that lasted
it was like
very
pulling teeth.
short time.
Every
Yeah.
week, it felt a little bit like pulling teeth. We did get some friends from it though, so that's good. But
Yeah.
just in terms of like a weekly meetup, it was much harder because everyone's got individual lives here, which is what I love. I love that people here have individual lives and I'm allowed to be an introvert and nobody's like, where's Anne? Where's Anne? That doesn't happen. Whereas in Merida, it happened a little bit. Like I would notice if I didn't go to an event, there's like, oh, she's always here. She's supposed to always be here.
But it was
Alex
such a
wanted to be
large
there, so I was
community.
there.
It was such a large community in Merida. There were so
Mhm.
many people.
Yes.
I love that. So,
And
how long
families.
was I
Like
in Merida? Like 4 months?
we left July. You got there February?
Yeah. Okay, so
I
like
think
4 or 5 months.
you left for a little bit during Merida, like but maybe a month? No, maybe like 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah.
But
But
either
I
way,
mean,
yeah.
it was beautiful to see like all these. Well, I mostly went to the single mom meetups, but all these
Yeah.
single moms that had moved to Merida with their children, and how well like the children got along, and how
Yes.
like we would see each other like twice a week or something like that. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. I don't know
Yes.
if that could ever be replicated in another city.
Oh, I'm confident the more expats you get, the more you can replicate it. I'm
Yeah.
betting Puerto Vallarta, Mexico City, Querétaro. Well, Querétaro, I also did not see family groups actually.
But these
But
were single mothers, though. I
yes,
think
but
that aspect of it.
Puerto Vallarta has single moms. They have got a
Does
single
it?
mom community. I don't know if it's only single moms, but they definitely have single moms that talk to each other and such over there. So,
That's pretty
but
cool.
that's a beach town, so I didn't
Yeah.
want to go to Puerto Vallarta.
So how do you pick the places that you go just for a visit? Because obviously, we travel full time. So we have the slow travel places like San Chris, Merida, that we stay for long periods of time. But how do
Yeah,
you go about picking like the ones that are just like a quick hello and goodbye?
nearby. Like for me, part what I like about slow travel. Oh, I saw a comment pop up. What I like about slow travel and being in a place for months and months, maybe even a year or two, is you get to know the area really well. And I think part of knowing an area really well is to visit all the nearby stuff, right? So when I lived in Florida, for example, I went to obviously Disney World and the places that my son was super excited about. But I also went to like a million little creeks and sinkholes and just nearby stuff, right?
Yeah.
These are not places just for my lifestyle method. If I lived in California, I would never fly to Florida just to visit, something in Florida. For me, I like to live in one spot and then visit the nearby places. So when we lived in the Yucatan, Valladolid, Muna, Coba, it made sense to visit nearby, right? So kind of like a spoken hub
The
concept.
adjacency is what you go with.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Look, listen what Doug said because it kind of reminds you of you, Anne. He said that Merida seemed like a good 101 kind of town, and then Chiapas is more for the advanced class. That is
Yes.
totally what you say all the time. Totally agree.
100%. Merida was
Yeah.
so easy. Like you almost like I don't want to encourage people. Like you're coming to Mexico, yes, we should learn Spanish, but I don't think you have to learn Spanish to come to Mexico. And Merida, probably not as bad as let's say Ajijic, which is 40% expat. I can't even believe that. So Merida
Wow.
is much less, but I could go to any restaurant in Merida. We'll say 90%, even the small street vendors, and they would speak enough English to where we could make it happen, right? So even if I didn't initiate in English, Barbie once I went to a restaurant with Barbie. She's a local in Merida. And she's like, the waiters understand you with your really not great Spanish. And I'm like, it's because they also understand English. So when they
Right.
hear an English speaker attempting Spanish, the two, they know what they're listening for. They know what the mistakes an American would make, as opposed to, let's say, somebody who speaks Japanese would make different mistakes, right, with Spanish. So I'm like, yeah, no, it's because they know English. And
Yeah.
therefore, my English, Spanish, they can
I'm
figure it out.
curious, Doug, you're still watching. Do you relate to what she's saying? Did you feel like everybody spoke English? I personally speak Spanish, so I go into an establishment speaking Spanish, so they won't speak to me in English if they know I speak Spanish. So my experience obviously is not like yours, Anne, but I'm
And the
curious.
stark difference coming from here and visiting Merida in June, like, because you don't. you don't realize it as an English speaker trying to speak Spanish. It feels like everyone is speaking Spanish, and you just appreciate when somebody responds literally in English, but you don't
Yeah.
realize how accommodating it is until you come to San Chris, which also they do speak English here as well, just not as much.
Right.
But then you go back to Merida and you're like, oh wow, it feels like everyone speaks English like off the bat, and it didn't feel that way originally. So yeah, going back,
Yeah.
you see the
I
difference.
kind of love the complexity of the language here in San Cristobal because I have difficulty speaking Spanish. Like some of the people I speak to, like my kid's got a new art teacher,
Mm.
and you can tell he's super educated because the words he uses, I have to like translate them in my mind before I'm able to respond. It's insane. I have no idea what he's saying sometimes. All right, he
Yeah,
said, very much so. We were surprised on our latest trip, Mexico City, this past December, much less English spoken. So I guess he feels like Merida had more English than Mexico City. I can
yeah,
see that.
yeah. I like part of me, and maybe it depends on what part of Mexico City, because Mexico City is gigantic. I think it's 9 million. I'm almost positive it's the biggest city in all of the Americas, like
No, I heard
population wise.
Guatemala City is the biggest.
Oh, is it? Okay, well then
Yeah.
maybe it's the second. Maybe it's the
Okay.
second.
Yeah.
But either way, yeah, it's like if I were to choose a third, like the next city that I might move to, because I've thought about this, I'm like, if I go to a different place in Mexico, where would it be? And I think part of me, like from a YouTube perspective, part of me is like, I should choose a place that's very like searchable. But another part of me is like, I kind of want to go deeper, you
Okay,
know?
wait. So are we saying that one of the things that you use to choose your next destination is how YouTubeable it is? Or
That's
how
new.
Googleable
That's a
it
new
is?
thing.
All
22
right, let
million
me
Metro,
see.
Doug says. Oh my God. Can't even imagine that many people. Yeah, Mexico City calls me from a YouTuber perspective. I just feel like it's the number one city in Mexico. So part
Yeah.
of me is like, I would probably skyrocket my channel. But my actual, like, what I think I would be comfortable with, I think I would be curious to know how deep I can go. I don't want to live in a place that I think, like I always want to have internet. I always want to have electricity. I always want to have, so I don't mean like the rural parts of Chiapas where, you know, even where Spanish is not spoken. But
Yeah. Well, on our
um,
last trip, I did not have reception most of the time
yeah, yeah, you
at
go into
all.
the mountains. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I know I need connection. Alex for sure also needs connection. But yeah, that would be my curiosity. Maybe when Alex is grown up and he's not living with me and traveling with me anymore, I feel like, oh, I heard about pollution in CDMX. Yeah, in Mexico City. But yeah,
Yeah. No,
part
he
part of
said
me
it's
wants to go to a more
overwhelming.
rural area
Yeah,
and
which is
test
kind of
my
what you're
Spanish.
saying. He agrees that Mexico City is overwhelming. To me, any big city is overwhelming, to be honest.
But you lived in Mexico City, or not? Sorry, you lived in New York for a little bit. That
And
like,
I hated
oh,
it.
did you?
I hated it. First of all, I
Oh,
moved to New York when I was 17. So,
mm,
and on my own. Like my parents said, if you go, you're on your own. So I was working full time, going to school full time, taking the metro at 2 in the morning sometimes. Yeah, I did not enjoy it. So I lasted like 3 years max, 2, 3 years. And then I moved on. So,
okay,
hi,
got it.
Chloe. How are
Hey,
you?
where is Coyoacan? It looks
it,
vaguely familiar. Do you know where that is? Or Doug, where is
Not
that?
of the top. Doug, where is Coyotan? Wait, is that how you say it? Coyoatan. Coyoacan.
Co-
Coyoacan.
Coyoacan.
Are you Googling it?
I am.
I want to
But
say it's a little town inside of Mexico City, but I could be wrong.
oh, it
Yep,
looks like
Lo
it
said
might
Mexico
be.
City.
Okay, okay. So if I go to Mexico City, we'll check that place out because yeah,
Yeah.
because overall Mexico City. Again, I've
And
never been to New York for that reason, or New York City.
it's where Frida's from. Is that where
Oh,
the museum is too, Glow? And Glow, you lived in Mexico City for a little while. Oh, the Frida House and where Cortez first set foot up. Is that what it said? The mess
okay.
the comments like disappear so fast. I don't understand
That's
why
why
they
I
don't
have
just
my
stay on the
laptop
screen.
on. Yes, because it flies. And then if they write a
Yeah.
lot, I can't see the entire message.
Technology. Yeah, but I've been to Mexico City, but very little. I
Mhm.
loved the food. Best dumplings I've ever had were in Mexico City. So, yeah, but, I need to go back. I try every time I fly out of Mexico City, I try to make, like, a pit stop and, like, look around and explore
Mm.
a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, and I haven't been to the Freedom Museum, so I'm kinda curious.
Yeah.
When
There's
I
so
first
much
moved
in Mexico City.
Yeah, when I first moved to Mexico, I totally wanted to know all things Frida, and then I heard that Mexico doesn't feel represented by Frida, and then I was, like,
Mm.
all confused by it, so
That I haven't heard, but I'm not in the art world. It's
oh.
not my area. So
That's true. Okay, so back to our topic. So, what else how else do you pick a destination? So, if it's a short destination, you only do it with whatever's close by?
yeah, yeah, especially if it's
Yeah.
short. Because I think that, so for example, Valladolid, Coba, Muna, they expanded my knowledge of Merida, right? Because it's similar enough personalities. It's all in the Yucatan, so it's similar enough to where it made my experience in Merida better. Same for here. We're in San Cris, but
Mhm.
everyone, going to Comitan, going to Chapa de Corzo, going to Tuxtla, it kind of enriches, right? Palenque, it enriches my knowledge of San Cris and Chiapas in general, right? So that I get a vibe for the place. So that's kind of my goal. Once I'm kind of feel like I've done that, then usually I'm ready to move on to the next city. So
So, for me, I would say that the agency issue is only because it's so much cheaper to go somewhere close,
yeah,
you know?
it's a
Obviously, if we
double
travel from
positive.
Yeah, if we go from here to Europe, we're gonna spend so much money on travel. So I really like the idea of using San Chris as my home base and then
Yeah,
just going to the closest areas because it'll be cheaper. So I can do
yeah.
more, than
But
if I
it'll
pick
also
something
be,
far away.
there's touch points, right? So you'll understand it slightly. Um,
But
yeah, so
here, you don't feel like every little town around us is so different culturally?
it's it's different, but they all come to San Cris. San Cris is like the marketplace
Yeah.
of Chiapas, I feel like. So people come
It's like a
here.
hub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, the more I know of the individual cities, the more I understand the people that are around me here. So it adds to it.
I
Valladolid
love
had the best food.
Yes, I love Valladolid. And for me, Valladolid, the thing was like the water in the center, the cenote that they have.
Mhm.
Getting to go there every day would have been so awesome. Now,
Yes.
Doug, you didn't feel like Valladolid was a little too small as far as like provisions, like going grocery shopping and things like that? Because that was my fear with Valladolid.
Mm.
Because it was like, I don't know, 20 blocks one way, 20 blocks the other way. It
It's
felt
a
so
it's a
tiny.
very small town. I think it's 20,000? No, 50,000 is the population of Valladolid. But they had like, again, with Alex, it's a no-go because the expat community didn't have the kid side of the house. Yeah, they had grocery stores. I don't think they had like a chain like a Walmart. I don't even know if they had a Chedraui, did they?
How long did you stay, Doug? Like, was it like a obviously you cooked if you went to the grocery store. I didn't. How long did
We
we
only
stay? Like 3 days?
three days, something like that.
Yeah.
Either 3 days or 3 nights and 4 days, something in that
Yeah.
category.
And I went twice because I didn't feel like the first time. The first time I went with Anne, and I didn't feel like we got enough out of it, so I went back
Mhm,
another
mhm.
time. Not to
Yeah.
mention that when I lived in Merida, I used to fly into Cancun and take the bus. And I get bus sick, car sick, moving vehicle sick, so it was a perfect pit stop. So, you know, all
Oh, he
4
said
days.
4 days. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are
I think
people,
that's
there are
perfect.
expats that live in Valladolid. So I hear the internet is decent. The necessities are there. Probably harder to get a place to live just because smaller the population, the less movement there is, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but overall, yeah, if you want to live by the food tasted better, and I don't know why. It was the same food. Like I don't recall like a menu item that was unique to Valladolid while we were there,
Me
but they tasted amazing.
Maybe you were really hungry. It was really hot.
Yeah, but Merida is also really hot. I don't know. Not that I didn't like the food in Merida. I love Yucatecan food in general, but
Me
yeah,
too.
for
Yeah.
whatever reason. Also, anyone that cooks for you. So, like even in Merida, when I would go to people's houses and they would cook for me, it surpassed any restaurant I went to for sure.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's why the trip so we did a trip close to Cuba. We stayed with the Mayan family, and the family cooked for us, and we did this together. And to me, that's still the best food. Like, I have
mhm,
not tasted better Mexican food than that trip, for sure.
home cooked for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
I missed that one.
Yeah, and
Doug, you thought Mexico City was disappointing? Maybe okay, so let me explain why I thought Mexico City food was so delicious. Here, if you go eat Chinese food or Japanese food or anything that is not Mexican food, it has a Mexican twist.
of
And when
course,
I went to Mexico City, we had been craving dumplings for like the longest. And we had been to every store in San Cristobal de las Casas that had dumplings, and they just tasted like empanadas. It didn't taste like a dumpling. So
mhm,
when we got to Mexico City and we went to a dim sum place, southeast region. I can't remember what the area was called, but the dumplings were so amazing that to me that was it. Like that made Mexico City one of the best places to eat. And then when I went to Guadalajara, we did the same thing. So we didn't eat a lot of Mexican food. We
mm,
ate like everything else that we're missing here in
yeah,
San Cristobal.
yeah. I wonder if, so like I'm told the further north we go, so definitely like border town kind of locations, the food and the Mexican food and then Tex-Mex start to blur together, right? So you'll start to get more Tex-Mex feel. So I wonder for the dumpling concept, because it's Mexico City, which is again gigantic, it might have a more international vibe to it because it's such a big city,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, they have a Chinatown. Even though I have to say that, some of the items in Chinatown were like, I don't know, they almost look like mass produced or commercialized. I'm not.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, you didn't really see families cooking. Not like the Chinatown in California or New York that you're not even. They don't even speak English sometimes. It
mm,
feels more authentic. But still, like they do have a Chinese population, and some other areas in north of Mexico have a Chinese population. So
yeah.
I'm sure they cook better than. Here's more like people that get the recipes and try to
Oh,
like.
right, but I'm just saying for international, it might mean that the population is newer, maybe. Like there's more coming and going. So like Chiapas has an Asian population, but the Asians that came here came a while ago, right? And so there's a lot of merging that happened
Yeah,
between the Chiapanecans and then like China,
yeah,
the
absolutely.
population
Kind
that
of like
came.
in Miami, though. When I talk about Cuban things in Miami, it's Miami Cuban specifically. It's not
Yeah.
really what is happening in the island still.
Right, right. So yeah, so whereas again for international places, there's so much coming and going that the different international locations tend to agree upon certain like they tend to become similar, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, so they lose some of their local culture and become this international vibe. So
Yeah. All right. So back to our subject. So when you moved to St. Chris, did you automatically know? Because I feel like I came for 4 months, but you came with the idea that this was it. Like you knew that you were going to live here.
so my style of
How?
moving, with the exception of RV life, but in terms of moving somewhere, I know that I'm going to be there a while. So I moved with the intent. So like Merida, I moved with the intention of staying at least 1 year, if not longer. And I have the same intention here. The next place I go, I have the same intention. I'll probably be there 1 year. Now I usually tell people 6 months, um, partially because I don't know for sure how long I'll stay, but also I find that people freak out if I tell them that I
What
truly intend
people?
to
Your
stay somewhere like
family,
a year.
friends? Who are you talking about?
Literally anyone.
Okay.
Just people, the idea, a year for some reason sounds like a long time for a lot of people. 6 months doesn't for some
Okay.
reason. So if I say anything, 6 months or less, usually they're like, oh, okay, no, that works. Like it sounds like a trial period. Once you start saying the word year, I think people are like, oh, then it must be serious. You must have a really great reason to move there. And I don't. It's usually something simple.
Yeah.
I know that I can be happy anywhere just because I've always, always, always moved. I've never lived anywhere for very long. Um, so I know I can make things work. I also know that if your first impression of a place is bad, I suppose if it's horribly bad, there might not be anything you can do. But just generally, if the first week you're like, I can't find anything I like to eat, or I can't find a place that I enjoy going to, that negativity, usually the longer you stay, you'll get to know the place. So the first impression might be bad, but then you stay longer. So I usually go with the intention of, I'm going to be here a while. We're going to love it. We're going to enjoy it. Um, if I were only there a week, I would be mad if in that first week I didn't find the things. If we went to Valladolid for a week, but maybe it was like a super rainy day and for some reason
Yeah.
things were closed, like I could see how it would feel bad. But the longer you stay, I think the more human the location gets and the more you get used to that region, and you can make it work. You can love it, the longer you stay.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think I like that way of thinking because you're gonna make it work. If you think like
yeah.
that, you're gonna make it work. And when we first got to San Cristobal, like for me is the vibe, right? That's what I look for. And for the first 2 months, I had a really hard time with the vibe because like Doug mentioned, this is like, for it's an advanced class and
Mhm.
there's so much diversity and the way people communicate was so different than Merida because in Merida everybody smiles. Here,
Yeah.
maybe 25% of the people smile,
Yes.
and it took me a while to learn how to relate to people, which is the first thing that I do when I get to a new place,
Yeah.
like talk to everybody. And when I got here, talking to everybody it was not a thing. It was impossible for me. Like it was such a difference. So that took me like a really long time to adjust to. And I think if I hadn't planned on being here for 4 months, I think after the 2 months I would have been like, I'm never going back to St. Chris. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, you have a good point. It's all a matter of like the outlook of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it takes a while. And
So
the more diverse a location is, I would argue the less smiling you're going to see. Because you get intimidated by,
possibly, yeah.
you know, too much change and variety is intimidating. And so I feel like smiling
Yeah.
becomes less prevalent.
Yeah, and also I feel like it's a cultural thing. Each culture handles themselves differently with people they don't know.
Mhm.
Some
Yeah.
people are smiling people and some people are not. I know in Miami, like Haitian culture is very different than Cuban culture.
Yeah.
Because Cubans will greet everybody right away. Haitians are a little bit more reserved until they know you, and then they're also very like loving and extroverted, but
Yeah.
they have a barrier at the beginning. I feel like that's kind of how it is here, especially
Japan's the
with some
same
of
way. There's
yeah,
there's
some of the
there's
people
a
that come
barrier.
from out of town as well. Like at first they're a little bit reserved, then you have to get past that before they
Yeah.
actually start opening up. So, yeah. But the other thing is like how my kids like adapt to wherever we are. And at first, like my oldest adapted right like really fast, like this was for her.
Mhm.
But my youngest had a hard time with me as well. Like we were both were like iffy about San Cristobal. So, but once they started making friends, everything changed. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
wait, so you're saying that by Doug, that by the map you can tell if you like a city? Is that what you mean? Is that what he means?
Just that you can tell a lot about it, Centro, or about the city by looking at Centro. Yeah.
So is that how you choose your destinations?
It's not something I've ever considered, that's for sure. But I do think downtown you find out about the history of a place. So, like even in the U.S., when you go downtown, you can see um, what it must have been like, especially if a city has two downtowns. It is interesting to see because sometimes the,
Oh, that is
the
what he's
the
saying.
city
So
center might change.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he picks his destination based on the map. That's pretty cool. That's pretty
I mean,
cool.
I definitely look at the map to see what's happening, but
Yeah,
not. I don't think I consciously look at Centro per se, but that is
yeah.
interesting.
So I feel I f- so through
So
Google
later I'm
Maps.
going to be Googling just Google Maps of these cities. So
That's
big,
not. That sounds like a fun experiment. Like if I can go some because so my thing, I'll look at videos. Like I'm a visual person, so I'll look at videos and then from the videos, if I like the vibe, then I'll go to those places. But I'm curious, like, could I go to a city,
Yeah,
just
I'm
look at the
I'm very
map
grateful
and
for you
choose
too.
where to go based on that? Hmm. That'll be an interesting experiment. Totally. Um, lost my train of thought of what we were talking about.
But yeah, so traveling with kids, it before Alex became a teenager, which is by the way recent, he became a teenager. Take into consideration my son's coming with me, so obviously I always ponder who he's going to make friends with, etc. Like at the end of the day, I chose the location. I wanted to go there. I saw potential for Alex being happy, and therefore we went.
Do you
But
not ask him what he thinks? Do you run it by him? I think you're freezing a little bit.
you froze or I froze.
I know. Did I freeze on your screen? Sorry, guys, if we're
Yeah, I'm not
freezing.
sure. Oh, it might be me.
Yeah. So, do you, when you go to a new location, do you ask him how he feels about going to the new location?
I missed it. I missed whatever you said.
Okay, I'll ask
Oh,
again. So, when you choose a new location, do you ask Alex what he thinks about the new location?
go somewhere new. I tell him um, whatever changes I kind of am leaning towards, and then he'll respond with his opinion. Um, so it's kind of like a almost like a ballet. It's kind of like I'm in the mood to, yeah. If we move, this is kind of what I'm at, and so we
Yeah.
kind of finagle it together a little bit. Um, yeah, so I think that's more accurate to say. But generally speaking, and even now, even though the next location we could argue is kind of Alex's choice, it's also that I was ready to leave San Chris, which I'm leaving San Chris soon. I don't think I said that in the video,
Way to
but
drop that bomb.
San Chris. But in that decision making process, it was again that combination of I don't think we're getting quite what we want here right now. Like I can see that we both have needs that aren't being met. What are your, so for Alex, what are your ideas? What are you looking for? Alex is looking for school, wants to go back to school. And so I'm like, okay, so that's his number one. Then in my choosing the next spot, I have to find one that has a school option for him. Um, so yeah, so that's how that ballet works. And then if I don't like his decision, and I say if, this is the first time that Alex has ever told me something where I thought to myself, ooh, that I don't like that idea. That's horrible. But
You get
um,
veto power.
yeah. But he's at an age where I think it's important that we listen to each other a little bit.
Yeah,
I hone in very easily to my opinion. I will always protect me. So I want and have taught Alex how to do the same thing. And while I always have veto power for sure, right? So long as I'm the adult in the relationship, I'll be the one choosing. I
of
want
course.
him to also experience making a decision, executing the decision, and then knowing, oh, this worked or it didn't work. Or here's, I misunderstood. So here's how I should have tweaked. So I want him to have that skill too. So
Yeah, that's a
so we're
huge
going to
skill to
do
have
the
in life,
thing
for sure.
that he wants to do,
Hmm.
which is different than what I want to
Yeah.
do.
No, I'm with
But
you. I do the same thing with my kids.
yeah,
I would say mine is a little bit more formal because there's three of us, right? So it can't just be random conversations here and there. Like the three of us have to actively sit together to discuss these things. But
mm,
yeah, like we check in regularly because, like, first of all, teenagers change so rapidly that it's kind of hard to keep up with what it is that they want.
which is why what mom says matters the most.
Absolutely, we've got the experience. We've
Yes.
got the experience, right, and the knowledge. But yeah, it's important for me to understand how they're feeling at the location that we're at to be able to help them make that next decision, right? Like where they
Yeah.
want to go next. So, and I
Yeah.
do cater to it to an extent. And also I like to explain like the money issue, right? because our two cities right now are Miami, which is so expensive, and San Cristobal,
especially
that is
compared to here.
really economical. So it's like such a drastic difference. So going between those two, this is something they need to know the money issue, right? Because life quality in Miami with my income versus life quality in San Cristobal is not going to be the same at all. Let me read his comment because I didn't understand it. My wife and I, both nearly 70, grew up with a very top down parenting style. What does that mean to you, Anne? Top
It
down.
means I'm the boss. That's what it means. It means mom and dad is the boss, and that's how I grew up. Like I've always moved. As a kid, I always moved. We moved where my dad's job moved us. So it wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a decision.
Yeah.
Um, the the last place my dad moved, because my dad actually does not like to travel, but he goes where the money is. He goes where the job is. So and then the family goes with him. So my dad's last move was the only time that he kind of chose for himself. It was against, I think everyone was mad at him when he made that decision. Everyone except my mom. She's very supportive. But in terms of all five kids, that was the first time that all of us were like, no, we're not moving there. Um, but what I loved, just as a kid, I loved seeing that my dad self-assessed and said, listen, my life how it is right now is not going where I want it to be. I'm at an age, right, the honorary age where we're like, we're going to get what we want out of life. We're not here to constantly do what other people tell us to do. So my dad was like, no, this is what I want to do. So we're moving. Um, and it turned out great. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't think it would, but it turned out great. So yeah, top down for sure. But
I guess my family was like that too, because when we immigrated to the United States, I was 10. I did not want to go, and I was furious at my dad. So I don't know if the whole family was mad at my dad, but I certainly was mad at my dad. So
yeah,
and Doug says that he didn't travel, but that his wife did or moved a lot.
mm,
But they both
yeah.
had wonderful parents. They would
I
never have consulted with them.
Yeah, and I think the more kids you have, and I don't know, Doug, how many kids are in your families, but like at some point, mom and dad just have to make a decision. It becomes too much.
Yeah.
I would say for me, every time we moved, with the with the exception of the last one, I love moving. I'm the oldest of five, and I love every time my parents were like, "We think we might be," I would go to my room and pack. Like I was ready to go. My siblings, all of them are like, "Are you? I just made friends. I just got to know this town. I'm on baseball, or I'm in whatever
Yeah.
the sport team they were in." So they, for the most part, they always hated it. It was unusual that I hated it, but
Yeah.
really the reason I hated it is because I was a senior. I was about to be a senior in high school, and so I had my adult plans like in progress, and I'm like, I had a scholarship lined up, but it was an in-state scholarship. So moving to a different state, I'm like,
Yeah.
I now I have no scholarship. Like it was very upsetting for me. Again, worked out for sure, but
Yeah.
at the time,
Doug
it
says
was
that he thinks
upsetting.
it's generational. Now, I also
Mhm.
wonder if it could be that Anna and I are both single moms. Like, I don't know if I know any couple with kids that allow their kids to like have a say.
Oh, they do all the time.
Yeah.
So I would say this: most families will not move because they have kids. Like one of the things families will say is, my kids in soccer, they're in baseball, they're in ballet, they're in whatever, they have their friends. There is a huge fear, I think, of moving children to a new location
Okay, but
because what if my kid hates it?
is it because the kids said so? Like the kids are like, you know what, I don't want to move, blah blah blah. Or is it
Mhm.
because, a lot of people have the idea that moving often could cause trauma for children. So
That too, but I think a lot of the people that want to move, let's say to Mexico, they don't necessarily want to have a travel lifestyle. They just want to find
agreed.
their new
Hmm.
home. So yeah, it's literally the idea of picking up and moving
Yeah.
because most people don't move very far from where they may have originated.
Yeah.
The idea of moving far is scary for both the parents and the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say that for me,
So, yeah, so I think they do
like
listen to their kids
the
as
routine that
well.
I have now of checking in on my children originated because of the fear, right? So originally, when I first started homeschooling, when I changed my life, right? Sold my business, started homeschooling, started traveling. All three things were things that could potentially be detrimental to children, right? Like, oh no, they need balance. Oh no, they need like routine, you
Yeah.
know? So because of that is that I created a culture in my family of always checking in on my kids, like making sure they understand how they feel and they can express how they feel. That way, every time we
Mm.
do something that seems a little bit out of the box and not common, they can express themselves if it's something that they're not liking or, that we can tweak and
So,
adjust.
yeah. Whereas everyone else might assume that their kids don't want to move. So you and I come from a really different background because my world is very military centric. So I, the people I'm around are also moving every few years, and or potentially moving every few years. So I think in the military culture, a little bit of that,
Right.
but there's
Yeah.
also an element of we get to kind of have a say maybe in our next duty station. And so I think families have that conversation. Lots of people in the military, they'll split where the military member, he'll go to the new destination and the wife and kids will stay because the wife has a job and the kids have whatever, and they'll stay. And so there's a lot of separating that's not related to deployments happening in the military.
Interesting.
So it could be that you and I come from different worlds. So in my world, the family always talks about moving, and then we're slightly aware, at least, that going to a new destination is stressful for every member of the family, even dogs. And so there's this element of you get to a new place and now we have to figure out the acclimation and then we repeat every time we move. So
That's
yeah, I
interesting.
think just the world I live in is a traveling world,
Right.
vice, a more civilian kind of lifestyle where you move
Yeah.
occasionally but not as frequently.
And also, so for me, I would say immigrant also because I feel like a lot of my friends, family, the people around me, it would be a scenario in which the parent would leave the kid behind to go make money in the US, or the kid would be sent to the US to study by themselves, or, a lot of that happening. And within that, there's not a lot of asking the children how they feel about it. It's just something
Mm-hmm.
that gets done.
Yeah. My parents also told me all of their finance. Well, my mom would tell me a lot of their finances growing up. I have pros and cons with that, honestly, because sometimes she was telling me that we're broke and we're suffering, and so my brain is like, we got 5 kids. How are like so there's some negatives in
Yeah.
sharing your finances with the kids, but there's also positives because I definitely learned from it.
So, Doug,
So
how did you feel about them being opaque with their finances? And Midwestern from where? I'm curious where you're from. And I'm guessing that if you decided to share everything with your children, you probably didn't like the fact that your parents didn't share with you, right? Because that's how I am. Whatever my parents did that I did not enjoy, I try not to do with my kids.
I tend to copy my parents a lot. Or like one parent. Maybe both parents didn't do it,
Rural
but
Indiana, Huntsville,
yeah.
Alabama now. Oh, how cool. Very nice. I've been to Indiana, but I think only the city. I don't know. It was a long time ago, 5 years ago. It's been
I've
a long
never been.
time.
Well, I think I did an assignment in Alabama, but yeah, basically I've never been to either.
Yeah. I think it's a terrible mistake. How to run your life should be taught in schools. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Well,
I
and we
think
unschool because of
it would
that,
be yeah. I think there's an element of parents need to be involved in that too, though. Like I, I have family members that are scared to share lots of information with their own kids, and I'm like, even though it's an opinion, right? Whatever we know about life is really ultimately an opinion as opposed to like a statistical fact. At a minimum, kids need to know what we think.
Mm, yeah. But also, like, learn how to make their own decisions, which I think is cool about having them evaluate where they want to go next, right?
Mhm.
Because it gives them practice for when they're older. Because right now, we're there to catch them. And we're there to be like, maybe that's not the best decision. but eventually they're gonna have to make the decision on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and my daughter's turning 16 this year. That means that in 2 years she's gonna be an adult. How
I
crazy
know.
is that?
These kids keep growing.
How crazy is that? All right, it's been 45 we're coming to an end.
We are, we are. Well, it
Yeah,
was
it was
fun
great
talking with
getting
you
to
as
know you, Doug.
always.
Yeah, great getting to know you, Doug. I recognize your little icon from comments, so it's really
Yes.
cool, like,
He's in
getting
comments
to
all the time.
chit-chat.
I love it.
Yeah, and glad you're still here. Nice to see you too. All right, we're done. Anything else you wanna say, Anne, before we go for today?
No, it's just fun. We should definitely do another live though at some point. Like I'm
Yes,
enjoying these lives. So yeah,
absolutely. And
we
as you
should do
all
it.
know now, she's leaving me, so
I'll be
it'll
leaving.
be really
Yes.
cool to do this when she's gone too.
Yes. Thank
So
goodness for YouTube giving this as an option. This makes it easy.
absolutely. All right,
Yeah.
bye, everybody. See you later.
I'll leave my next location as a surprise for now,
Yeah,
but
you
you
need
guys
to
will
make a
find
video
out.
about it.
You'll find out. All right. Have a good
All right,
one.
bye.